welcome to Everyday Philosophy with Angela and Nicole. So today we're going to talk about the challenges of cultural relativism by James Rachels and Stuart Rachels. So first of all, we're going to like to explain what cultural relativism is.
Give you a little insight about it.
So cultural relativism is a theory that holds based on cultural differences. There is no objective and universal ground moral truths, and that different moral codes are equally legitimate. We all know that there are different cultures with different moral codes. Each of these cultures look at the costumes of another as strange, and sometimes with disgust.
Yeah, there was in the beginning of the article, there was a story about, there was this King Darius of Persia. He was able to look at two different cultures. One was the Greeks and one was the Galatians. He looked at their funerary practices. The Greeks, they burn their dead. Galatians, they eat their dead. Now, he was able to ask the Greeks what the Greeks thought about the Galatians eating their dead. They were appalled, like no one would eat their dead. They think they were crazy, probably. Then he also asked the Galatians what they think of the Greeks burning their dead. They were disgusted. Who would burn their dead? Like for them, the body is sacred. Like what would you do? So it kind of gave us a lesson as to tolerating cultures, because the Greeks and the Galatians didn't exactly fight with one another. It was just that there are cultural differences. So how they get along, they just tolerated each other.
The same problem with differences in values and morals or costumes happen in the contemporary world. There are still differences between cultures, and it is difficult to provide objective grounds for saying that a particular moral code is better or worse than the other. On the other hand, there is a line of thought on the basis of anthropological and sociological studies, which tell us that every people has its culture, and it is legitimate to say to these people for themselves what is morally right or wrong.
Now, we have criticisms of cultural relativism. We narrowed it down to 5 points, right?
5 points. Yeah. So some parts turn to be right, some parts turn to be mistaken. So the first point that we have is different societies have different moral codes. So before we actually start making the video, I was talking to Nicole, and then we try to find differences between all cultures
or similarities
and similarities too. So one of the most outstanding differences that we found is that in my country, when someone commits a crime, let's say raping, that person is to be taken to a community lot, like it's a community square, and then the people would hit him and also get him naked and humiliate him. So like it's kind of absurd in a way that they want him to feel what he did to the girl, let's say. So I was telling that to Nicole, and she was surprised by it, because in Philippines it doesn't happen. You go to jail or you go to court, but that doesn't happen in my country most of the time, because within those communities, they take their own justice.
I think the communities you mean are the ones like not even the cities.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of communities, but
communities.
even though in your country doesn't happen, and I'm pretty sure in others don't. For point number 2, we have the moral code of a society determines what is right within that society.
So in my culture, we are strictly religious. We're kind of like, we have this conservative moral codes. So what is right into us, since majority of this society is Christians, then our moral code is based on our religion, right? It's the same as like if one was coming from a Muslim community, then their moral codes or what is right for them would be coming from their
from the Quran, basically. So for point number 3 is there is not objective standard that can be used to judge a moral code better than the other. So since there is so much difference between the Philippines culture and Ecuadorian cultures, I can't say that my culture is better than her culture.
Yes, because we're totally different, right? So now we've come to a time where we have to get back to you. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi everyone, welcome back to Everyday Philosophy with Angela and Nicole. Now, before the break, we were in the middle of talking about our 5 points from the articles, right? I think we were on number 4. Number 4.
For point number 4, we have the code of our society has no special status. So since there are so many cultures around the world and all over the world, we can't say that there's a specific culture that has a specific status, because there could be that some ritual makes them unique and original, but it doesn't make that
they could have special status, right?
Because they're special.
Other cultures have also a uniqueness to it, so we can't say that they stand out from the rest, because other cultures have more original, they have more uniqueness to them, so we can't really say that they should have a special status. Yeah.
Okay, so for point number 5, it is mere arrogance for us to try to judge the conduct of other people. So even though we've been talking about, my culture and her culture, then still I haven't lived in Philippines. I haven't, engaged with that culture. Then I cannot be talking about that culture because I don't know. Then how can I be talking if I don't know?
Exactly. I cannot. Same thing here with Angela. Yeah. I cannot judge Angela's culture or her society on her beliefs, because I don't know what made. I haven't lived in that society. I haven't engaged in them. I don't know what made them think that, or made them believe that. So.
But if I was talking about Nicole's culture, I would be talking basing on my own culture, and
it would make you biased, right?
It would make me biased,
and it would be unfair. Totally.
So also we were doing a little bit of research, and then we found this article that says Americans with guns at border use cultural defense.
It's kind of an interesting note. This article says that there was this Ontarian lawyer who defended American citizens who would cross the border and has guns with them. Now, Canadian law states that you can't have armed guns here unless you have license for it, or yeah. Now, according to him, the best defense you could actually give out to court is the cultural differences. But isn't it funny, cultural differences and cultural relativism, that we should have our own unique, we have our own moral codes, our own moral laws, right? So if the American steps foot on the Canadian soil, then he or she should abide by Canadian laws. What's also interesting and funny is the one you mentioned about Canadian.
It's funny because so the guy is bringing guns into a Canadian floor, but then his defense is culture difference, because in the States there's so much violence that they have that as a background to bring guns with them. And since Canada accepts everyone and it's willing, to welcome everyone, but do they really, accept the people?
Do they really embrace
just the people, or also the cultures? They don't accept the cultures. They don't care about anything else but the laws within Canada.
They kind of have this tolerance. Right?
Yeah.
Tolerance, the exact word.
To other people.
To other cultures.
But if you do something that doesn't go along with Canadian laws, they wouldn't still care about the culture. And to defend yourself, here in Canada, based on your culture, it will take, a long time in court and years to prove what you're saying and to prove that what you're doing is based on your culture. So there's not really that they don't embrace it, that meaning that Canada takes everyone and welcomes everyone, because that's not true. Yeah. They just tolerate them.
Exactly.
So since cultures
we've talked about cultures having differences. Now we're going to talk about some cultures that are similar in a sense.
Similar in certain ways. For example, I was talking to Nicole, and one thing we have in common with Philippines and Ecuador is that most people, not everyone, they're very religious, and they're Roman Catholic. So you know what? We are ready for a break, and then we'll be right back.
Yeah, we'll talk about the similarities when we come back. Thank you. Hi, and welcome back to Everyday Philosophy with Angela and Nicole. So we were in the middle of talking about differences and similarities, right? Now, though we lean more on the differences, now let's try to talk about some similarities.
So as we were saying that there are most people in Ecuador and in Philippines that are mostly Roman Catholic. Well, we have different codes of behavior compared from the Philippines and Ecuador. They're also different. They go to mass one day, we go to mass another day, and then even during mass we have different rituals.
We have different practices, how we do things is different.
But we have the main goal, which is serve a certain God, and that's what we have in common. Serve Him. Doesn't matter how we actually do it, as long as within our Christian terms. And then we have that similarity that we found.
Yeah, it's like one goal. You want to clean a house, right? The way I would probably do it is doing it manually, like do it with a broom, okay? Angela's way would probably do the vacuum. Now we do it differently, but we attain a certain goal, or a purpose. We clean the house. Yeah. Now, what would it be if we take cultural relativism seriously?
So, well, there's a problem with that. Believing that all cultures are equal. Then let's say if you are engaged to most of the cultures or all of the cultures there exist. If you want to do something, let's say that in your culture it's not appropriate, but it's legal in another culture, then you'll do in a different culture. But then, what are your moral standards? Do you really have moral standards or moral truth? You are not gonna have none, because it varies from culture to culture.
It kind of begs the question, right? So if we say my truth to my society would be cultural relativism is not true. We don't want to deal with other people. We don't want to deal with other cultures. So one would probably say, no, you can't be that. But remember, cultural relativism says that we have our own rights in our own societies, right? We have different ones. So in my society, I say cultural relativism is wrong. You can't tell me that I'm wrong, because it kind of begs the question. Yeah.
So well, that's if we take it seriously. What if you just don't want to follow cultural relativism? Many people don't follow it, and we can see here in Toronto there is Chinatown, Koreatown, places just for Spanish people, Hispanic people, Italian people. They get along with a lot of cultures, but they don't interact with them, and they gather together within their own cultures because they feel comfortable within their own culture, most than sharing with other cultures that they don't know.
It's kind of well, for me, I think they interact, but then there will always be a gap towards
No, you can interact with other cultures, but not that really, feeling that interaction that that you can actually relate to them, and you can live with them, and then you can do stuff with them. They're not gonna be that. It's
gonna be in the back of your head. You may not say something, but in the back of your head, you'll be thinking well, okay, that's your culture.
Yeah.
The attitude towards it, right?
And you're not gonna like some stuff about them because it's not your.
You're you're trying to deal with it. You're just learning to deal with it.
You're just
tolerating.
Maybe not tolerate them, but then you learn to live with them, but not really get along with them. It just goes in a different levels.
So with this reading, we can conclude that the idea of cultural relativism is a wonderful idea.
Sure.
But as wonderful as it is a utopian idea for a utopian society, and we're not getting there. I haven't been to a society where acceptance of different cultures.
I think it's because due to our human, nature, that we are so egocentristic that we think of
that we are superior to.
Yeah, and then we only care about us and like our people, and then we're so egocentristic that we're not able to see, how people see the world in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So then from that point, of course, we're not gonna be able to see to be cultural relativism with other cultures.
Yes. Now we're up to speed and we're up to time. So tell us what you think under the comments. And this is.
See you next time.
Yeah. See you next time. This is Angela and Nicole.
Bye.